Good Tvach.
Good
We're
luck.
learning as a schusser for Shlema, for Ilana Chaya Baserach, and for Meir Ben Cyril Perel. We are really on the top of Mem Aleph Amid Aleph. We're just going to remind ourselves a little bit how we got to here. So we had started, where did we start from? Trying to remember. We had just said this sheet of Rav Nachman and Rav Raman and Rav Yitzchak. Let's say Ein Adam Oyser Davar She'ein Shaloi. That was on the bottom of Mem on Bebeis. They said a blanket statement that a person has no ability to affect someone else's property negatively. You can't be ovid, you can't worship someone else's property and therefore cause it to become asatim under any circumstances. This was in distinction from Rav Huna. Rav Huna had said that there are some circumstances in which you can affect someone else's. You could be ovid, you could worship someone else's property. If you do a maisa, like we said, if you shechted, the example we gave is if you shechted, and Rav Huna had said, even if you do a maisa kolshehu, right? Because he said from Ula, and Ula said, any maisa is going to make it into, is going to be make it that you're able to affect someone else's property. So therefore, we have to learn, we had a problem from this brisa of Hashoichet Chatas B'Shabbos V'Chutz Laves Kechavim. He's chayiv 3 chatayos. We said he's chayiv both for Shabbos, which is not controversial. He's shechting on Shabbos, but he's also chayiv for chayiv shchutei chutz and chayiv being ayre avodah zarah. And the problem is, if we say that when you're worshiping someone else's thing, that you do a maisa, how are you ever going to have that you have shchutei chutz? Once you are it, it's no longer kachim. They could be chayiv shchutei chutz. So we said the answer we gave. We're talking about where it was chatas ha'if, because otherwise we said a chatas ha'if only needs one siman, and we have to explain why we said chatas. The reason why we said chatas over there is because the chatas is something that after he shechts it, it no longer belongs to him, it belongs to the Rebbeinu Shalom. But he shechts it where already the siman was pagum and it just needed a mashu to complete the shchita. So it was all at the same time. He finished shechting it to be over avodah zarah. At the same time, there was over on shchutei chutz. So that was the explanation of Rav Huna. Okay. So then we said Nachman Rav Yitzchak Amri on the bottom, and we asked him that how are we going to explain this mission that said that we explained before that it's because we said chatas, it must be talking about chatas ha'oif. So we have to make it that it didn't belong to the owner, but according to him, according to these three Amarayim, what does it make a difference if it was a chatas ha'oif that was already pogum? In any case, we say it doesn't make a difference. It belongs to someone else, belongs to the Rebbeinu Shalom. It's irrelevant. So we have to say that since it's for a kapara, it's as if it belongs to him, and therefore his ownership will make it that it had to be talking about a chatas oif with a chatzi kana because the kapara makes it his and it belongs to the owner. I'm sorry, it belongs to him in the sense that he's going to be able to affect it by doing the mashahu of a maisa. Okay. So that brings us to where? Toshma. So we're going to ask another kasha on these Manda Amrim who say that as a general rule, Ein Adam Oyser Davar She'ein Shloi. 4 lines to the top. Beis Oyschem B'Sakin. Our Mishnah said 2 people are holding on to the knife. V'sheichtin. Echad l'shum, echad mikol elu. One is shechting for any one of these things mentioned in the Mishnah that will answer it, that we say it's puzzle. V'echad l'shum davar kosher. And one is saying is shechting it He's not. He doesn't have in mind. He's doing it l'shem Chullin. Shchitasei psula. Right? Our mission is not talking about. We're talking about shchitas Chullin. Our mission is not talking about like the brisa about kachrim. It's talking about regular shchita. So we say since one of them is holding it, shchitasei psula. So l'chayra, how could one person passel against the other one? L'chayra, the Gemara is just assuming that we're talking about where either one of these two people own it. The Pasha is just talking about one person owned it, and the Mishnah doesn't specify, so it could be either one owned it. So how could it be if the one who has a machshava of avodah zara will passel the possession of the other owner, the person who actually owns it? So we're talking about whether there's a shutfis. If there's a shutfis, then the person who had the machshava of avodah zara is not on a davar oisa davar she'ein shalai. He's answering something that belongs to him. Toshma. Hamatama, Fahamadama, Vahamanasach. Someone who has a machshavas, who makes something tame. These are all examples of a hezek she'ein nikar, where you damage something without it being visible. So someone who makes someone else's tfua tame. So Rashi, another place says we could be talking about truma. So if you're matama truma, then you can't eat it. But I think even if it's stam produce, it probably is less valuable because you can't be mixed with. You're gonna have to be careful with it. It can't be mixed with truma afterwards. And we saw that the other people are makbid not to eat, not to make themselves tummy. V'hamidame, someone who causes he mixes it together with regular. He mixes truma together with Chullin. So then he causes all of it to be treated as truma, which is truma is less valuable because it can only be eaten by a kohen. V'amenasach, another hezek she'ein nikar, another a non-concrete, a non-physical type of damage is someone is ovid. He pours someone else's wine for avodah zara. B'shoigig potter, b'mezid chayv. He does it b'shoigig, he's potter for damaging. But b'mezid, the chamu misak and a hezek she'ein nikar is going to be chayv. The Gemara says, how could you be menasach on someone else's property? It should be ineffective, and therefore you should not be chayv. You didn't do any damage. So Gemara Hakanami the shut b'sigbegava. So Gemara answers the same text like we said before. It's not that he did it for someone else's property altogether, but rather he was a partial owner. They were both shukvim, so he was damaging his own property as well as the other person's. So he's going to be chayiv to his shuk. Kitanoi, and this is a machalikas tanoim whether ein adam oiser davar she'ein shaloi. Oivet kecham shenisach yeni sheYisrael shaloi b'fnei avodas kecham. And oivet kecham, that was menasach. He brought it. He poured it out for avodah zara, the yayin of a Yisrael, but he didn't pour it in front of avodas kecham. He did it, on the side. Asru. It becomes asru. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba, matirin. They say it's mutam. They shnei dvarim. There's two reasons why it's mutam. Echad she'ein menaskin yayin ela b'fnei avodas kecham. First of all, this is not a real yayin nesach. In order for yayin nesach to become asur according to them, he has to do it in front of the actual avodah zara. Just pouring it out onto the ground is not avodah zara. Even though it's not like we saw when we were learning avodah zara, obviously yayin nesach is a machshava that he has at any time. I guess these Tanaim disagree. Secondly, that they say that the yid tells the guy, you can't go ahead. You have no ability to aser my wine on me. So you see, this second man, these Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira and Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava are saying like the three Amoraim over here that say, even though they're doing a meiser, right? The guy is doing a physical meiser, pouring out the yayin for avodah zara. Even so, they say it's not within their power. So Rav Nachman, Rav Yavam, Rav Yitzchak, Amri, afilu mandam adam oiser davar she'ein shaloi. They would say there was a machlekes in the Tanaim, right? Not before we said Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. We said it's also. So you see that you could ask al-Khayr. That's not like them. They would say over there it's a different case. Hani mili kusi. It's only by a guy. Abu Yisrael, L'tzura Kamachavan. They would say that this that we say, this that we, the only example where we're going to say that Adam is Isur Davar She'ein Shaloi is by a guy. Because a guy, taka, means to answer it, and that mandam will say it's us. But they say, it's not that etzem, there's no such thing as Adam Ein Adam Isur Davar She'ein Shaloi. The reason why they say Ein Adam Isur Davar Shaloi is because there's a reason for that. They say whenever a person does it, he's just doing it to cause anguish. He doesn't really mean to answer it to whoever he's doing it. Like when he's Oived Avodah Zarah on someone else's property, he doesn't really mean it. He's just trying to antagonize him. So since it's not sincere, it's not a real Avodah Zarah, and therefore it won't answer. It's very interesting that this Gemara in the end is saying that this shita of Rav Yitzchak, these three Amoraim, is really based on a pragmatic consideration. It's a consideration that they say, meaning he's not actually trying to aser. It won't actually be aser because he really is letzure kamachavin. He's just doing to tease him. Toshma. Beis oichsen besaken, b'sheichten. Two people are holding on to a knife and they're shechting. Echad l'shum, echad mikalelu, and one has in mind for one of these avodah zarah. Ve'echad l'shum davar kosher, and one has in mind not for avodah zarah. Shchitosei psula. It's possible. Now, l'chayra, we're going. Again, we're talking about bepashtus, where only one of them owns it, and the Gemara, for some reason, I think they discuss it that we're not answering the same teretz of before that there's shutfin. So we say a different teretz. Hachamai skinon. I'm sorry, did I say ve'echad l'shum davar kosher? So l'chayra it's shver again that we're seeing that one person, whichever one was the owner, it can be ruined by the other person, even though he's not the owner, if he has in mind avodah zarah. That is a different case. Even though we've said l'tzurei kamachaven according to Rav Huna, I'm sorry, not according to Rav Huna, according to these three Amoraim, and that's what we'd say. So he would say, even according to the Tanakama, we'd say l'tzurei kamachaven. But if it's a Yisrael mummer, then we don't say L'tzura Kamachaben. So there's another way out of this, even though we said sort of like a blanket statement that no one can ever ask something of someone else. First of all, there's an exception of a guy, because a guy, there's no L'tzura Kamachaben. And secondly, there's an exception of Yisrael mummer, who I guess sort of equivalent to a guy, that when he says he's doing a Avodah Zarah, he really means it, because that's what his whole life is about. I think we saw once before, right? A mummer is somebody who, or maybe it's a min. A min was a guy who dedicated his life to being like a priest. But a mummer is somebody who also has decided that he's going the wrong way. So such a person is not l'tzura kamuchab. Toshma. Another question. Hamatama v'amadama v'amanasef b'shayik pata b'mezid chayiv. We brought the brisa before that says, if someone is menasach b'mezid, he's chayiv. Why don't we say that he should be pater because l'tzura kamachav, and it shouldn't be aser. Hachanam b'Yisrael mummer. Again, you could answer b'Yisrael mummer. Amalei Ravacha Breder Rav Ravashi. Hisru boy. What happens if someone told this yid he's about to be Oived Avodah Zarah on someone else's property, and you gave him Masra, and you said you're not allowed to do it. V'kibel love Hasra, and he said, okay, I heard what you said, I shouldn't be do it, but I'm going to be Oived Avodah Zarah on it anyway, with the Maisa. Do we say on this also l'tzura kamachavim? Amrulei hiteratzon l'misa ka'armet en l'chal mummer gadol mizeh. He says you can have the same cheshbon as a mummer. I don't know why he isn't a mummer. I'm not sure why this is even a question. How is that different from a mummer? If someone was told, don't be Oived Avodah Zarah, and he says, I'm going to do it in spite of being warned, I don't remember the rules of what makes someone a mummer. But that's the answer. We say that he is a mummer, and therefore we're not going to say L'tzura Kamachaven, and he will be successful in answering the animal. Zok the mission. Ein sheichten. We had this before. We came across it briefly when we talked about pouring dam into a kli. Ein sheichten loyletich yamim. You're not allowed to pour the dam from a shchita
directly into the water.
Right into the ocean. The loyletich naharis, not into rivers. The loyletich kalim, and not into kalim. All for a similar reason, but the first two are different. If the dam goes directly into the yam or the naharis, people will think you're being oived them. That's the way of it being oived, by slaughtering, letting the blood go in. And if he collects it in a kli, he's obviously not doing it to the Beis HaMikdash. He'd have to be in the Beis HaMikdash to have a Kabbalah Saddam. There's nothing to do with Kachim. So a person will assume he's doing the Avodah, he's doing Kabbalah Saddam for Avodah Zarah. This is Takanas Chachamim that one may not do so because it's like a maris ayin. It looks like you're doing it. But he can do it into a pond of water, meaning not a river or a sea, something smaller, and that's not a problem because that's not what people worship. Ubesvina al gabi kalim, and if he's if he's in a ship, he could do it into a kli, because even though normally you can't do it into a kli, but people understand that you don't want blood to get on the floors. You know, you read about the pirates that the decks of the ship were slippery with blood. They don't want blood on the ship. They want to keep it ship shape, as they say. Ein sheichtin leguma kol ikar. You can't shecht into a hole in the ground at all. That also. This is something that the Avodah Zarah would do. They would shecht and collect the water, the blood in a hole. But he can make a hole in his house. In order to collect the dam, obviously that's going to be to keep things clean. And in the marketplace, you shouldn't make like such a hole, so that the people won't think that he's doing like the tzdukim. Like we said, the tzdukim would shecht into a pit. If you do it in public, it's going to cause people to suspect. You know, this is all obviously very difficult. This Mishnah, because it first says you can't do it in a guma at all. Then it says you could do it in the house. Then it says don't do it in the shuk. It's going back and forth. The Gemara is going to explain what the shaklatai is. Sagt Gemara, ein sheichten loyle toich to yamim and the horis and to a kli. Sagt Gemara, ma'ishon toich yamim the loy. Why can't you do into an ocean the army l'shar the yamakashaka? People say you're doing it for the malach of the yam. L'toich ugo shamayim nami. Why do we say you can do it into a pond? Army. Sagt Gemara, why? Even though there's no sar, there's no malach of the pond. They will say that you're doing it to your own reflection. The person is shechting, having himself in mind. The Vice says the Gemara understands ego, that the person's reflection, if there's any opportunity to worship himself, narcissism is a very strong pull. So Zok the Gemara, right? Because like where are we coming from? All of a sudden we're saying Babu Ashel, all of a sudden he's going on to his reflection. Amarava Bakurim Shanu. It's a very good taina. We would assume that he's worshiping himself, but we're talking about cloudy water. That's the only time you can't do it into a clear pond that your reflection is seen. Speaking about ego and ponds, I was just telling people by my Shabbos about somebody who painted the bottom of the reflecting pool under the Washington Monument blue so it wouldn't look green anymore, instead of clearing up the algae, because we had algae in our pool. So it's not really reflecting, it's actually blue because they painted underneath it, which, I don't know, just somehow seems tied into this whole discussion. We say you can't shecht into a pit, because that's like what the tzaddukim do. In fact, the Gemara says, the Gemara is asking, we said Ein Sheichtin L'Gum L'Klal, and then we said that you could do it in your house. The Reisha is talking about the shuk. But the safe is talking about when we say you could do it, it's in your house. So there's two separate things. There's no worry in your house that people will see. Rava says it doesn't make any sense. At the end, we say b'shuk. So how could you say that when we say you can't do a cloud, it's talking about inside? We said when we said you can't do it, it can't be talking about b'shuk because it said the later b'shuk. You're talking not allowed to do it into a pit at all. Someone who's in his house and he wants to clean it out. So what can he do? He can shecht on a slant. He makes like a access, a trough that goes into the pit, and he shechts there, and then the blood goes straight into it. So it doesn't go straight into the pit, it goes first into this slanted area and then drips in. Oh, then the Mishnah continues, it says, but you can't even do this with a slanted area, a sloped area that goes into the pit. So that the sadukim will not be supported by people seeing you do it. So what's going on a ship? And he has no place to shecht without getting blood all over the place. He sticks his hand outside of the svina, and he shechs it.
On the side.
And I'm sorry, on the side of the ship,
yeah.
Right? It should go on the side, not go straight into the water. And that does not look. If someone was trying to worship the angel, the malach of the sea, they would do it straight into the water. And we say the precise case also of where you wanted to shech inside your chutz. And a shuk, you can't do that. If you do so, you're following the ways of tzedukim. You're copying what the tzedukim do, even though he's doing it with the slope and he's doing all these things, but he's doing it publicly. Someone who is so insensitive to doing something similar to what the tzedukim do in public, you have to check after him, check after his yichus, where he's holding. Zok the Mishnah. Hashaychet l'shem oila, someone who shechts for an oila, l'shem zvachim, for other karbanos, l'shem asham tali, for a asham tali, that's an asham that's brought generally. We'll see some achleikas, but generally we understand to be an asham that's brought for someone who's mesupik about whether it was over. There were two pieces of chaleb, and one was asham, one was not. L'shem pesach, he brings l'shem pesach, l'shem toida, shchitasei psula. If he shechts an animal that's this is an animal of Chullin, and he has in mind any of these things, then the shechita is going to be possible because you're not allowed to bring the shchutei chutz. So these are all karbanos that you could bring. Person has the option to bring these things. We're going to go through them one by one. Why they're all optional. Some of them seem not to be optional, but since you have the option to do them, so this is the Takanos Chachamim. Since a person could make this, he could be Mekadosh for this, so it will appear as if he's doing Shchutei Chutz. Rav Shimon Machshav. Rav Shimon doesn't hold of this Takanos Chacham. Zok the Gemara, Shnayim Oichsim Besakim. Two people are holding on to a knife. B'shoichtim, and they shech together. Echad l'shum, echad mikolelu. One has in mind one of these karbanos, which would make it possible. V'echad l'shum davar kosher, and one has in mind for a davar kosher. Shchitasei psula. Again, the shchita is going to be possible because of the person who had in mind the inappropriate, the shchutei chutz type of shchita, and it's talking about the same case we said in the previous Mishnah, where he was a shutef. Otherwise, his machshava should not be able to be passel someone else's thing.
Is the Gemara talk about Rav Shimon?
Now this is all.
Does the Gemara talk about Rav Shimon over here?
I'm sorry?
Will Rav Shimon be machshir similarly?
In this case, by Shnai Moifsim?
Yeah.
Rav Shimon holds it's always kosher. So what does what would Shnai Motzei make any? Why would it make any worse?
Oh,
Of course
I
it's
don't know.
kosher.
Usually, it was just the fact that he was saying it's part. I mean, the tzad to say that. Why would you have more of a tzad to say that it's kosher here? Is that what it is?
No. It's of course. Well, over here it's just that there were two people involved.
Okay.
But we're saying even if a person shechted his own thing, let's say in one of these karbanos, Rav Shimon says we're not misakin that it's similar to shchutei chutz. We don't
So
care that
Shimon
it'll
is
look like
definitely
shchutei chutz.
machmir.
So the Shnai Motzei just makes it a little better that it is one person who has the right machshava, but it can't make it worse than if he did it fully his own thing. I think.
Makes sense.
Those are all those type of karbanos that a person are optional. Hashoichet, or like the Gemara calls it in a double. Hashoichet l'shem chatas l'shem asham vadai. If he has a l'shem chatas, so you only bring after you or over on a lav. L'shem asham vadai, where a person, that means like if someone was moil, or for a shvua, you bring an asham. L'shem bechar, l'shem meiser, which you can only bring if you have a bechar, if you have meiser. L'shem tmura, if a person exchanged his carbon for another carbon, he has to do the tmura has to be brought as a carbon. That's the takanas. The Gemara, the pasuk says, and those shchitot are kshera. All those the shchita is going to be kshera because it doesn't appear people would know if he was mechayiv for this carbon, and if when he says it l'shem these things, it could be safely ignored. No one thinks it's shchutei chutz. Zaklal, kol davar shenidav and nidav hashaychel l'shmai aser, according to the Tanna Kama at least. The rule is that anything that's optional, that a person decides that he wants to bring, if he brings it l'shem that, it's going to be aser al its appearance of shchutei chutz. Sheini nidav nidav hashaychel l'shmai kosher. But the second list is not. And the Gemara is obviously going to explain why we had to say zaklal. It's so interesting. I was just thinking about this. Is just a philosophical question that it just seems like strange that you have so commonly that Mishnayos will tell you two lists and then afterwards say Zeh Klal, and we would say the Zeh Klal is telling you something else. Why don't we just say that other thing? Why don't we say Zeh Klal? Because it's almost like every Mishnah is like that. Like what are we saying different? There should be a reason. Like someone like Chaim Kanievsky should have gone through Shas and say there's a reason each time why we had to say it as Zeh Klal instead of together with the rest of the list. I don't know. I don't know why this occurred to me, but it was just bothering me today. Okay, Zot the Gemara. Hashoyach l'shem oila. So we said the list of things that a person could do voluntarily, and then we said Asham Tali. Asham Tali bar nidav and nidav who? Person doesn't have the option to bring an Asham Tali l'chayra. L'chayra he only brings it when he was misupik about whether he was over. Am Rav Yochanan Hamani Rebbe Lozahi. This is according to Belaz. A person has many cases where it's possible that he was over. So you can always bring an Asham Tali. We all have things that we do wrong that we don't even know about. See, just because you don't know exactly what happened, Rebbe Laz is confident that we bring an Asham Tali. There's something you did that, like when I was just telling my 29-year-old son says I used to come down. When it would wake me up on Shabbos afternoon, I would come down and smack him, and he would say I didn't do anything, and I would tell him, "I'm sure you did something. I just don't know what it is." So that's why everyone could bring an Asham Tali, because everyone did something, they just don't know what it is. I don't think this ever happened, by the way, but
what, did he ever smack him, or did he never did anything?
So that's the answer for Asham Tali. In fact, tomorrow Pesach. What?
That you ever smacked him, but that you never did anything. That you ever smacked him, but that he ever did anything wrong.
Pesach, I don't know if I ever smacked him. I probably did. I know there were plenty of things that he did that I knew about that deserve smacking. It was a long time ago. It was 29 years ago.
Okay.
People didn't get broken so easily.
Oh.
Listen, I'm sure you got a fraska too when you were in Chayda. Luzi, I know for sure. Luzi went to a Hasidic place. They believed in spare the rod, spoil the child. And I don't think they even needed to spoil the child. They just did it l'shma. Okay. Pesach bar nidav Neither who? What about Pesach? Pesach is not optional. You bring Pesach on Erev Pesach. Zman kavile. It's only for that zman. Shani Pesach Hayelav Afreshasei Kol Hashana Kula. So you can be mafresh the Pesach any time in the year. And Rashi says, and once you're mafresh it, if you then bring it, it could be a shlamim. So you really have the option of bringing the Pesach at any time. Amr Yani Loishanu Ela Tmimi. This din that we say that if you bring an optional carbon, you're going to be over that people will see you and they'll think it's over and shlutei chutz. That's only that's not a bal mum. Avol bali mumin, but if it's a bal mum mediyadi, then we know he's not bringing it as a carbon. So again, we're not going to be chosh shlutei chutz. Rabbi Yochanan mafilo bali mum nami. Zim derabli midiyamum avolo yadi. Even about mum, a person might not see. There might be something hanging over the mum, and you don't see it, and therefore they'll be choishish al shlutei chutz. Someone who shechted l'shem chatas is something you're mechuyev, so therefore you're not mechayev. That which we say that if you shechted l'shem chatas, you're not chayev because it's something that you're mechuyev to bring, and you can't just decide to bring it, and people would know that you're not really mechuyev. That's only she'enech mechuyev chatas. But if he's mechuyev chatas, then you would say that he's bringing it l'shem chatas. He's fulfilling his obligation with this animal. He just said l'shem chatas stam. He wasn't saying it l'shem the chatas that I was like run. He says the proper lashon. He designates it for the avera that he did. L'shem tmura. That's only if he doesn't have another carbon and it was already Makadish, where he could make this could theoretically be the Tmura. It's no different than the Shlomim that he's able to bring at any time. He can bring this Tmura also. We say that maybe this was the Tmura of that carbon that he has. Just because he's saying l'shem tmura, that's a general statement that I want it to be a tmura. But if he does, unless he says that I want it to be the tmura of this carbon, the person seeing it will not think it's shlutei chutz because he's not saying that he's making it a tmura for that carbon. He says that as well. So he said at the end, Zehaklal. This is the rule that it depends. Kol davar shenidav v'nidav hasheichel l'shmei aser. If it's something that's optional, he can bring, and it's aser, and if not, it's mut. Lasuya. So what does it mean? The first part that we say that it's shenidav v'nidav it's aser. Lasuya oilis nazir. It's talking about an oilis nazir. That person brings at the end of his naziris, he brings an oilah. The ma'od that is considered something that's nidav v'nidav. The ma'od tema haloi nadar. We could say, but in the meantime, he hasn't accepted upon himself naziris. So even though he could accept upon naziris, and then he'll be mechuyev this carbon, in the meantime he hasn't done so. Ema neither betzina. That we could say, but no, even so, an oilis nazir is going to be chayiv because the person seeing it will think it's chutei chutz because maybe he was makabel naziris at a different time quietly, and now he's just bringing the oilif. Then we said if it's not nidav v'nidav, then it's going to be potter. It's not going to be chayav. Lasuye oilus yeledus. Coming to tell you an oilus yeledus which is required. Amar b'laza lo shanu ala she'en la yisha. That's only if he doesn't have a wife. Maybe he's doing it for when she had a baby, and that's why he's bringing the carbon. He's talking about where he said, I'm doing it l'shem oila that my wife has to bring as a yeledus. That's pashut. If he said l'shem oilus ishti, and he has a wife, why shouldn't that be a viable shchutei chutz? We could say that people will realize she didn't have a baby, and if there would have been a baby, there would have been a kiddush, and he would have known about it. So now when this person says, I'm bringing it as a oilus yeledus for my wife, who didn't have a baby, who never heard of a baby, they're not going to take it seriously, and it's not going to be a problem of shchutei chutz. Kamash malon, they will say, no, maybe she had a miscarriage that I didn't hear about, but she still has to bring the Eilis Yeledes, and that's why he's bringing it for her, and therefore it would be Taka Chayiv. Okay, what time is it? 10:44. Okay, we'll stop over here. Shkoyach.
Good luck.
Well, Shkoyach.
Good Vach.